All rise. You may be seated.
We are on the record of the people of the state of Michigan versus Jeffrey Thomas Willis. The file number is 16180186FY, and we resume the preliminary examination. I believe this is day number 3. Mr. Hostek is here representing Mr. Willis. Mr. Hilson is here representing the people of the state of Michigan. Mr. Hilson, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hostek, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Then you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the people of the state of Michigan call David Hayhurst to the stand.
Matter not putting before this court, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Have a seat, state your name, spell your last name for the record, please.
My name is David Hayhurst, Hayhurst.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hayhurst.
Good afternoon.
What department do you work for?
I'm employed by the Michigan Department of State Police at the Grand Rapids Laboratory.
And how long have you been working with the state police?
I'm a few weeks shy of my 12-year anniversary with the Michigan State Police.
And what is your current assignment at the crime lab?
I'm assigned to the DNA and Biology unit at the crime lab. I also do some part-time crime scene response team duties, but primarily I'm in the DNA and Biology unit.
Now, your official title is forensic scientist, is that correct?
That is correct.
And could you describe for the court your training and experience in the area of forensic science, please?
So educationally, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology pre-medicine from Yale University. After that, I have a Master's of Science degree from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and that's in biochemistry and molecular biology. And then upon hiring with the state police, all of our analysts undergo a training period in the disciplines within which they work in. In my case, that training period was approximately 6 to 9 months for the biology or serology portion of my training, and then up to the 2-year mark for the completion of my DNA training for the forensic scientist capabilities that I have. After that training, all of our scientists are required to participate in continuing education to stay on top of the field as it has changed over the years that I've been there. So that has included different seminars and conferences, updates in technology as they become available. So a variety of different types of continuing education.
Now, we had, on Friday afternoon, we had one of your colleagues, Michelle Schmidt, testify. She talked about her latest certification. You, sir, are pretty close to that, is that correct?
That's correct. I actually did complete in the last 2 weeks. She has recently completed several months ago. The latest component of our technology is a software program known as StarMix, and it's a statistical program that we use. She had completed that training initially. I was trained in that program a little later than her, and I actually just received the final sign-off from our DNA technical leader, so I have been released for casework in that discipline, or in that area of analysis.
Okay. Now, as part of your role with the Michigan State Police and the Forensic Science Division, I'm assuming you worked on hundreds of cases over the years, is that safe to say?
Yes, that's safe to say.
Now, does that include both, not only the serology part, maybe you could describe what that entails, and then certainly the analysis part, what that entails?
So evidence that's received in our laboratory for our unit undergoes a two-phase analysis process. The initial is that serology or the biology screening. And the goal of this testing is to identify potential stains that are on an item that may yield probative DNA types of results. And so this is the part of the analysis where we will screen for blood stains and seminal fluid stains, saliva stains, and select which samples to forward for DNA analysis. I've conducted hundreds of cases over the years for that portion of the analysis. The second part is the actual DNA analysis portion, and this is where once stains are selected and forwarded for DNA analysis, I will attempt to develop a DNA profile from an item. This is the part of the process where we are in the lab working with small volumes of liquid and transferring and handling, and we use a variety of biochemistry and molecular biology types of techniques, and we'll make small copies of that genetic profile so that we can attempt to determine a DNA profile that's available for comparison against evidence, between evidence and known samples that are submitted.
Now, Ms. Schmidt explained to the court, her role in this investigation and what likelihood ratios are and how it's different than, I guess I'll call it the standard way that MSP has done it for years. You, sir, in your analysis, used the old statistical version. If you could just briefly describe what that is.
So historically, we've had two primary avenues of determining a statistic. Anytime, as a DNA scientist, anytime I will determine there's an association between a piece of evidence and a known, we are required to provide a statistical estimate so that you may determine how rare or how common that profile might be in the general population. In the case of a single source profile, such as a blood stain that matches to an individual, if those two profiles are the same, we have a standard statistical calculation that's been in use for a number of years. And it's this idea of the random match. It's the idea that I would go into the general population at random and select an individual who is unrelated to any of the parties involved, who also has that same DNA profile. And what we see is that as we have more and more data that's available for that match, we see that profile becomes exceedingly rare, and that likelihood, or that the probability of selecting another individual who also matches becomes a very large number, and it becomes more rare. The other match statistic that has been in use for a number of years, and it's slightly being displaced with the new StarMix analysis, and it's the idea of a mixture type of a statistic. A mixture type of a statistic is slightly different thinking, and it would be it takes into account all of the genetic information that is present in a sample. For a mixture type of a statistic, we're talking about a match between, or inclusion between an individual and a mixture of DNA profile, or a mixture of DNA types that are in a sample. That mixture of types presents a little bit more of a challenge because I don't always know exactly which DNA types pair with other DNA types, and so it's not as informative necessarily as a straight match. So the numbers are quite a bit lower. But in a mixture type of a statistic, it is a representation of the probability of selecting, again, an unrelated individual from the general population who also has DNA types that are accounted for within the mixture of DNA types that are present in a sample. Again, because there are more DNA types than just one individual, I have to consider different possible pairings, and so it actually increases the probability that an individual may be included in a mixture, depending on how complex that is. So that's why we typically see in those mixture types of statistics, the numbers are quite a bit lower than in a straight single source profile between a piece of evidence and a known, where I can use that random match and generate the larger numbers.
Mr. Hayhurst, have you testified in this area in court before as an expert?
Yes, I have.
Do you know approximately how many times?
I've testified in either serology or DNA over 60 times, and some of which have different matches that have been reported with statistics, and others different levels of types of associations. But I would say in the areas of biology and DNA, over 60 times.
Your Honor, based on Mr. Hayhurst's testimony, I asked the court to qualify him as an expert in the area of forensic biology, including the specialties of serology and DNA analysis.
Mr. Haskett. Objection. There being no objection, the court will receive Mr. Hayhurst as an expert under MRE 702 in the area of forensic biology, with the court also admitting him as an expert in serology and DNA analysis.
Mr. Hayhurst, you in this particular investigation, you served a couple of different roles. You mentioned a little bit at the beginning of your testimony. You were part of a couple of mobile crime units, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you also assisted investigators in doing some DNA analysis as well, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I'm going to hand you, give me 1 second here. Hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 92. This is record number 7 under GR 162492. Do you recognize that report, sir?
Yes, I do.
Is that a report that you authored?
Yes, it is.
And in particular, what I'm interested in, this is a serology report, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in this report, you analyzed a few items. The ones that I'm interested in, this had to do with some underwear, right, that was discovered at one of the locations.
That is correct.
In particular, item 4D, so GR 16-24924D, a pair of pink panties. Can you describe to the court what tests you did on them?
So I received the item GR 16-2492-4D. It was a pair of pink panties. They were received in the laboratory, and one of the first tests that was conducted, again specifically because of the nature of the panties itself, was the idea to screen them for potential seminal fluid being present. We have a number of tests that are available for each of our chemical or for each of our biological substances that we look for, and standardly with a seminal fluid type of test, I start initially with a chemical test, and that's the first actual test result that's listed here, this acid phosphatase positive. It's a simple chemical test. What it does is will indicate if seminal fluid is present, there will be a color change when I have my chemicals and reagents. And in this case, there was a small stain located in the crotch of the panties. It was about 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And when I tested that portion of the panties, it did indicate the possibility, indicated the presence of seminal fluid. After that initial indication of acid phosphatase positive, our standard procedure would be to follow up with a microscopic test. So I took a small portion of that stain and prepared a slide. We have different stains that are available for our slides, and after preparing the slide, I stained it and observed it under a microscope. And I did observe the presence of sperm cells on that slide. So the microscopic sperm positive would be the reported conclusion. In total, between those two tests, the overall conclusion would indicate that the presence of semen was actually confirmed in that small stain from the panties.
All right, Mr. Hayhurst, I'm giving you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 93. It's record 18 under that same complaint number. Is that a report that you authored?
Yes, it is. Record number 18 under this laboratory number is People Exhibit number 93, and it is a copy of a DNA report that I issued under this case.
All right, just so we set the groundwork here. The known samples you had a known sample for Jessica Heeringa, is that correct?
That is correct.
Rebecca Bletch?
That is correct.
That next person is a juvenile, so I'm using her initials, MJN, is that correct?
That is correct.
Jeffrey Willis?
That's correct.
Kevin Bloom?
That is correct.
A Charlene Willis?
That is correct.
Michelle Schnatella?
That is correct.
Okay. And those were the knowns that you had?
Those are the known DNA profiles that I had available for comparisons.
All right. Now, I'm not going to have you go through, I'll pick the ones that I'm interested in because you did a lot of DNA work for this particular report, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I want to direct your attention to the bottom of page 4. We're going to start there. As it relates to the 22 handgun grip and trigger, could you describe for the court what you did in that, please?
So all of the samples underwent the same DNA analysis process that is standard in the laboratory. For the majority of them, it's the standard DNA process of breaking open the cells, collecting the DNA. The next step is a quantitation step where I determine how concentrated or how weak a sample might be in terms of concentration. The next step is an amplification where I will make multiple copies of specific portions of that DNA analysis. Then I will run it on a genetic analyzer to separate all of those copies, and that's what gives me that DNA profile that then I will take and compare at my desk and compare the evidence to the knowns. Specifically for this item, item number what we termed as L38BX, this was a swab of the 22 handgun, the grip and the trigger portion that I swabbed from that handgun. And the DNA analysis process was underwent, and I obtained a single source DNA profile. That DNA profile was from a male contributor. And then I went to compare it to the different known samples that are present. And what I observed was that the DNA profile from item GR16-2492-L38BX, swab of the 22 handgun, matches the DNA profile from Jeffrey Willis. And again, anytime I will have that association of a match between an evidence and a known, there is this statistic that is corresponding to that to, again, determine how rare or how common that profile is. So the statistic is actually listed further in the report on page 9. This is, again, that random match type statistic. So it would be the using available population frequency data. It would be the probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random from the general population that has a DNA profile that also matches the DNA profile from that 22 handgun grip and trigger. It would be 1 in 6.124 septillion in a Caucasian population, 1 in 6.369 octillion in an African American population, and 1 in 252.5 septillion in a Hispanic population. The most common one here would be the Caucasian population, 1 in 6.124 septillion individuals. So it would appear that that profile is exceedingly rare.
In other words, my question to you was, for the Caucasian population database, the septillion number exceeds the world's population.
Yes, it does.
Next, marching the right direction. This would be the top of page 7, please, the very first one, dealing with the interior end surface of the .22 handgun slide. Could you describe what you looked at there?
So again, one of the, when I was initially processing the handgun for that initial serology phase, there were some indications as I looked at the interior end off the barrel of the .22 handgun. There was some initial chemical tests that indicated a possible presence of some blood stains. So that was forwarded for DNA analysis. It was kind of limited in sample, so I didn't do a whole lot of extra testing on the front end, instead saving that sample for DNA analysis. The DNA analysis did indicate the presence of, it was a mixture of at least 2 individuals, so it did have some additional DNA information beyond that first donor being present, but it was a sample where there was a clear major donor. In this case, that major donor would be the individual who would have left DNA behind in excess or more DNA than other donors on that item. And that major was actually a male donor. That DNA profile was compared to the DNA profile from Jeffrey Willis, and the DNA profile from the major donor of the swab of the interior end surface of the .22 handgun slide matches the DNA profile from Jeffrey Willis. Again, because there's a match between an evidence and a known, there is a corresponding statistic, and on this one it is on page 10 towards the bottom. And again, it is this, because that major donor profile is determined, I can set that apart as being from one donor. I report it as a random match type of a statistic. And it would be the probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random from the population who also matches that major DNA profile from the swab of the interior end surface of the .22 handgun. And it would be 1 in 192.4 septillion in a Caucasian population, 1 in 282.4 octillion in an African American population, and 1 in 15.68 octillion in a Hispanic population.
Just so that I'm clear, this is a swab of the interior of the slide itself. In other words, the part of the gun that slides back, it's on the inside of that.
That's correct. My gun terminology is not quite up to the firearms examiners, but that would be when you slide the top portion of the gun back, it exposes that barrel of the gun, and I swabbed around the actual barrel of that weapon on the end.
And I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. Your initial review of that prior to the DNA part of it was, you said yes, you found potential presence of blood, or no, you didn't? I didn't quite understand.
It did give me some indication of a possibility of some blood, but again, because it was limited in both sample kind of size, the sample size and the intensity, I did not do a whole lot of extensive testing on the again at the serology portion, because I wanted to rather save that for the DNA analysis portion, which would be much more discriminating than determining whether or not it was human blood versus just the possibility of blood. So that sample was kind of preferred to the DNA analysis.
All right. Now, same page, it would be, I think, the third analysis as it relates to the swab of the waistband of the red panties.
That's correct.
This is obviously different than what you talked about initially with the serology of the pink panties. This was the second pair in that same batch.
That is correct.
What were you able to determine as it relates to that?
So the red panties were, again, underwent the same series of tests that the pink panties underwent, although the red panties did not give any indication of seminal fluid. So because of that, the red panties were just swabbed for more of a contact type of a swab for potential wearer. And so in this, I swabbed the waistband of that red pair of panties in an attempt, again, to determine who would have had contact, perhaps wearing those panties. That sample was forwarded for DNA analysis. It was forwarded as item number GR16-2492-4E1X. It's the swab of the waistband of the red panties. And the DNA results actually also indicated the presence of a mixture of at least 2 individuals, including at least 1 male contributor. And on this sample, it was slightly different than the previous sample where we discussed the mixture. On this sample, there actually was not there was not one of the donors that was present in an excess amount as compared to the other. By that I mean that the two potential contributors to this sample were present in a more equal type of a fashion, and so there's no way for me to clearly say that this donor is major and this would be the minor donor. The peaks were a little closer. And so when we get a sample like this, it's reported back to, it's more the idea of who could possibly be included as being a possible contributor. On these items, it was compared to the known samples that were available, and both Jeffrey Willis and Michelle Shinatala, are included as possible contributors to that mixture of DNA types that was obtained from the waistband of the red panties. Again, because they are included, there is a statistic that is represented here. And as I flip to page 11, again, this is the type of a statistical calculation that is the mixture type of a calculation. And that would be, it was a CPE, the combined probability of exclusion. And it's an estimate of the percentage of individuals from the general population, the CPI, the combined probability of inclusion, as the reciprocal. It's an estimate of the percent of individuals from the general population that could be possible donors to the mixture of DNA types that were obtained. So it would be the estimate of selecting someone from the population who could have contributed potentially. And for the swab of the waistband, red panties, the CPI is, reciprocal CPI is 1 in 930,200 in a Caucasian population, 1 in 18,450,000 in an African American population, and 1 in 2,517,000 in a Hispanic population. So again, we see numbers that are quite a bit lower than what we saw with the random match type of a statistic, but it would appear that it would be relatively rare to select an individual from the population who could potentially be included in the swab of the waistband from the panties.
And that's given the two profiles that you discovered, right?
That's correct. Both of those individuals do have DNA types that are represented in that mixture, so they would both be included. The chance of selecting another individual would be the numbers that were represented here.
Okay. Now, as it relates, going back to the pink panties for a minute, you had talked about discovering the one stain that appeared to be seminal fluid, or was seminal fluid, excuse me. Was there another stain that you also analyzed?
The single stain that was forwarded from those panties at this time was that one stain from the crotch. However, because sperm cells were detected, we handle it a little differently in the laboratory as far as the DNA analysis process. Stains where we have seminal fluid detected, we do what's termed a differential extraction. And this is our attempt to physically, biologically separate the sperm cells that are present in a sample from all of the other cell types that are present in that stain. And so that one sample actually becomes two, which is why we have two reported conclusions here. That first fraction is the everything else portion. It could be potentially skin cells from people who are present, white blood cells, different types of cells that might have been present and intact on that panties. The F2, the second fraction, is the conclusion that's reported at the top of page 8. That would be the what we used to term the sperm fraction, and that would ideally be all of the sperm cells that are present in that sample. Now in practice, sometimes it's not as clean. Sometimes we see there's so much DNA in one fraction that it carries over to the other. But it's our way to give our best attempt to separate that sperm donor from all of the other cell types that are present.
And your conclusions for both the fraction number 1 and fraction number 2?
So the first fraction, again, the stain in the crotch, the pink panties, the first fraction is that everything else, and it was consistent with a female contributor. It was a single source profile that was consistent with a female contributor. That DNA profile did match the DNA profile from Michelle Shinatala. Again, because there's a match, there is a statistic that is represented, and that statistic is on top of page 11. It's a random match statistic, and it would be the likelihood of having another individual from the general population who also matches that would be 1 in 3.621 nonillion in a Caucasian population, 1 in 932.8 non-alien in an African American population, 1 in 38.02 non-alien in a Hispanic population. So it is an exceedingly rare profile. And then all of the other knowns that were compared were excluded as being potential donors to that DNA profile.
And then for fraction number 2?
Fraction number 2, again, that would be my attempt at having the sperm cells segregated in that sample. And what I actually saw in the DNA results was that it was a mixture of 2 individuals. It was a mixture of 2 individuals. There was not a major minor contributor. They were equal and they were present in more equal amounts. At least one of those donors, though, was a male contributor. So that mixture of DNA types was compared against the reference samples that were provided in this case. And both Jeffrey Willis and Michelle Shinatala are included as possible contributors to that mixture of DNA types from the fraction number 2 of the stain in the crotch pink panties. Again, because there is that idea of the inclusion, the association that's there, a statistic is represented. It is a mixture statistic because the donors are present in more equal amounts. So it's the mixture calculation. It would be the likelihood of selecting another individual from the general population who could have contributed, and it would be 1 in 222,200 in a Caucasian population.
Is that as the male?
Yes, that's correct. That fraction 2, the what we used to term the sperm fraction.
I'm sorry, the sperm.
That's correct. We've moved away from that wording, but I prefer that wording too. That's that would be 1 in 222.2 thousand in a Caucasian population, 1 in 102.8 thousand in an African American population, and 1 in 317.7 thousand in a Hispanic population.
Okay. The 2 reports that I gave you, 92, exhibits 92 and 93, do they appear as they did when you first authored them? In other words, is there anything that's missing or that's different?
No, they both appear to be intact and good copies of what I authored in this case.
I also want to show you, just real quick, so we have a frame of reference here, Mr. Hayhurst. This is People's Exhibit 89. It was 2 pairs of underwear that you just described collected at in a shed at the defendant's residence. And are these when we talk about red and pink panties, are these the 2 pairs that you analyzed? If you want some gloves, we can get you some. Oh.
People's Exhibit number 89 is a bag that was received into our laboratory. I see my laboratory stickers are on this item. It is unsealed and opened at this time, but you can see the seals where various members of our laboratory have had opportunity to reseal this. Contained within are several items that I received. Specifically of interest right now are the 2 pairs of panties. The first would be the red panties, Victoria's Secret red pair of panties, and then a pink pair of panties, again, I believe Victoria's Secret brand, both of which were submitted.
And that's what in your report, when we reference red and pink panties, these are the ones that we're referencing, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, I move for the admission of people 92 and 93.
Mr. Hoskett, that's 92 and 93. There being no objection to people's proposed exhibits 92 and 93, both will be received into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions of Mr. Hayhurst.
Cross, Mr. Hoskett.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is it Mr.?
That's correct. That's correct.
So over the last 2 days, I've been used to hearing terms like quintillion and septillion and octillion and big numbers, nontillion. But when we're talking about the 2 most recent pieces of evidence that you examined, when you did the mixture comparison on the panties, both pairs of panties, the numbers go down to hundreds of thousands.
That is correct.
It's a huge difference, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, it is.
In fact, with regard to the second fraction with the pink panties, the chance of the match being Mr. Willis and Michelle Snotala in a Caucasian population is 1 in 222,200, correct?
Yes and no. It's the number is an estimate of potential different contributors who could have potentially be included in that mixture. In this case, both of those individuals were included, but the number more represents kind of an estimate of how rare it is as far as taking someone at random and including them. And yes, the number would be lower for these, but again, it's because of the way that statistics calculated. It just so happens that along with this statistical estimate of how rare those are, both of those individuals are included.
Okay. But when you make the comparison among the African American population, the chances of a match get better by almost 50%, or 100% rather.
The numbers do actually look to be a little more favorable. Again, this is a representation of those specific DNA types that were obtained. Certain DNA types are more rare or more common in different population groups, and that's why we see the difference between the numbers. To see differences between numbers on this type of a statistical estimate, to see differences in the numbers like this is not necessarily out of the norm. We see that, again, we're talking about multiple different possible pairings of those DNA types, and the rarity of some of those alleles versus other alleles will help to drive some of those calculations. And so to see those two numbers differ is not necessarily surprising as compared to other similar samples I've seen, but it does appear that those DNA types were more commonly represented in this population subset of African American.
Okay, well, it may not be that uncommon as you term it, but for every other test I've seen you perform on this lab, the chances are much less that an African American match would be possible than a Caucasian match.
On this specific sample or all of the other samples? A majority of the other samples, the numbers do appear to be more favorable to the Caucasian types of population. But again, that depends on the different types of allele rarities for each of those samples.
I'd like to direct your attention to a different piece of evidence. And that would be, let me ask the big broad question first. Did you find Jessica Heeringa's DNA on anything that you tested?
I did. I found some DNA profiles that were provided from the original scene at the gas station.
Okay, that was a bad question. You tested the blood swab from the gas station.
That's correct.
And you probably had comparisons from her mother and father.
I actually had first a alternate reference. It was a toothbrush, and then I compared that against the mother and father to confirm that that was a good alternate reference,
Okay,
and then was used for comparison.
that was
Yes.
a toothbrush taken from her house.
That's correct. That's my understanding. That's correct.
How about these items of evidence that you tested in this lab?
Under this lab number, no, I did not.
Okay. With regard to GR 162492-L11AX, can you find that?
Yes.
Okay, that was the swab of a silver end of a vibrator found in Mr. Willis's van, correct?
That is correct. There was a small silver vibrator that was submitted, or it was collected. It was swabbed and underwent DNA analysis, and it did provide a DNA profile of at least 2 individuals, including at least 1 male contributor.
Okay. And can you elaborate on what the results of the test were? Who was a match, DNA match for that?
So after determining the DNA profile was a mixture, it is one where there is a more major contributor, so a major DNA profile was determined from that sample. That major profile was compared against the references that were provided, and it matched to Charlene and Willis. Again, because there is a match between Charlene Willis and the major donor from that swab of the silver end of the vibrator, there's a statistic that is represented, and it is on page 10. It's statistic number 7. be the probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random who also matches the DNA profile from the swab of the silver end of the vibrator. And it would be 1 in 9,200,000 in a Caucasian population, 1 in 79,240,000 in an African American population, and 1 in 13,410,000 in a Hispanic population.
Okay. That the DNA would be Charlene Willis and Jeffrey Willis.
That statistic is an estimate of finding another individual who would also match that same major DNA profile, and that profile matched to Charlene Willis. Jeffrey Willis was actually excluded from that sample.
Okay, so Charlene Willis, you are aware, is Jeffrey Willis's wife?
That is my understanding, yes.
I have no further questions.
Just so on, a couple of points, I just want to make sure I'm clear on Mr. Hayhurst. On that last question, so Jeffrey Willis's DNA profile was not found on that silver vibrator?
The swab of the silver end of the vibrator, the mixture of DNA types that were obtained was compared to Jeffrey Willis, and he was excluded as being the major donor, and actually the minor donor was low enough that it was insufficient. There's really no way to make an association to that minor donor. His DNA profile, though, would be excluded as the major donor for that item.
And the other point of clarification, too, is in going back to the fraction work that you did, fraction 1 and 2, you're not telling, what you're telling this court is that both the defendant's profile and Michelle Schnantola's profile were on both of those fractions. Is that safe to say?
For that first fraction, it actually was a single source profile, and it matched Michelle Schnantola, so that would indicate to me that there is no additional DNA from any other donor. That did appear to represent DNA types from her and her alone. That second fraction, though, was again a mixture of DNA types. Both the DNA types from Jeffrey Willis and DNA types from Michelle Schnantola are both represented within that mixture, and then as soon as there is that, as soon as they are included as being possible contributors, then we will trigger that type of a mixture statistic. But their DNA types are present on that item independent of each other. Their DNA types would both appear to be present on that item.
Now, and just for my clarification, when you talked earlier about when you have a sperm fraction and you do your best to separate that fraction from everything else, I'm assuming that, science is not 100% perfect. So it's probably, unless you tell me otherwise, almost impossible to make a complete separation.
It's a variety of factors that kind of go into play. The easiest would be talking about the relative amounts of DNA. On a lot of samples that we look at, we have a lot of sperm cells that are present, and then there's a lot of other types of cells that are present, and those two are able to be separated a little easier. In this case, there were not a lot, I guess I would not term them as a lot of sperm cells being present on the item. They were present, but it wasn't that there was an excess of sperm cells being present. So when we talk relatively speaking, there would have been a lot of DNA in that fraction 1 from contact DNA, from people having contact with that item over a long and continuing period of time, and then a smaller amount of DNA from that second fraction. And when we see that, it's not uncommon to have some of that DNA from the first fraction carry over into that fraction 2. That separation is not always 100%. It makes our life easier when it is a little cleaner, but in practice, we do see in a number of cases where we see carryover from one to the other. I've also seen the other situation where there's so many sperm cells being present as compared to the amount of other DNA that's present that I will see bleed through back to the other side. So it's not an uncommon situation. It's my attempt to best separate those two fractions, and this is what we obtained in this case.
So that mixture in fraction 2 doesn't surprise you?
No, it does not.
I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
And I have no questions, so may the witness be excused?
Yes.
Actually, Judge, I have one question.
Go ahead.
I think you're allowing a broad cross with regard to whether it's involves redirect or not.
Cross is wide open as to any relevant matter unless we narrow the scope and we employ the scope rule, and then we say that it's going to be limited to the scope of direct examination. We didn't do that earlier, so I'm going to allow you to cross cross on any relevant matter.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hayhurst, yesterday, Mr. Hilson asked your colleague, Ms. Schmidt, about bleach, the effect of bleach on DNA. Somehow it destroys DNA, correct?
That is correct. Bleach has been determined to be one of the chemicals that can actually destroy DNA. It will break it up, and it will decrease the amount of DNA that we see available and present and intact in our analysis.
Okay. Would it also, so it kills DNA, right? Basically?
In a sense, yeah. It fragments the portions of the DNA and puts them into smaller pieces so that it's no longer available for what we need as far as testing goes.
Okay. I probably don't need a scientist to ask this, but bleach could also destroy things like mold in a house, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And make whites whiter in the long run.
That is my hope.
No further questions.
I have nothing else, just saying.
Right. May Mr. Hayhurst be excused? Mr. Hilson?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Haas?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're excused, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
People of the state of Michigan call Michelle Schnatella to the stand.
Raise your right hand. The matter now pending before this court, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Have a seat. State your name, spell your last name for the record, please.
Michelle Snotella, Michelle, Schnotalla.
I'm going to try to get through this direct exam by getting your last name right. I've been butchering it, so I apologize. It's Schnatella, right? Schnotella?
Yes, Snotella.
Snotella?
Yeah.
As long as I think about what's out there.
Exactly.
Ms. Snotella, who do you work for?
Herman Miller,
And how long have you been working for Herman Miller?
22 years?
And do you have a particular shift that you're working?
Yes.
What shift is that?
I work third shift.
And back in, and how long have you worked third shift, I guess is a better question.
7 years.
So would that encompass the years of 2013 and 14?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you know a person by the name of Jeffrey Willis?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Mr. Willis?
We worked in the same area.
Okay. Did you work the same shift?
Yes, we did.
Now, you'll have to excuse my ignorance on this, but in the area that you worked, were there a lot of people, a small amount of people? How many people?
The areas that we worked together, the coil lines and the DNKs, there was approximately 8 to 10 of us.
Okay. And so it wasn't like you were working amongst 100 people, it was a very small group.
It was a small group, coil lines and DNKs, yes.
All right,
What
and
do you say, Ms. Schnatella? Is it coil lines and what?
It's some presses. It's a coil lines and DNKs. Two different areas that are in close proximity, machines.
You're saying D and K.
D and K.
D and.
Yes.
Gotcha, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes.
do you recall during the time frame that you worked with the defendant, what his job responsibilities were?
His job responsibility was to get us materials. He was a material handler.
Okay, and without getting into a whole lot of detail, what would that entail? I mean, people would need,
We would need him to bring us supplies, put our supplies away, things that we produced.
okay. Now, back in 2012, 2013, were you a gun owner?
Pardon me?
Did you own a gun back in 2012, 2013?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall what kind of gun it was that you had purchased?
A P-22 Walter.
All right. I'm going to show you here what's marked as People's Exhibit 76. Does that handgun look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
Does that look like a gun that you had purchased?
Similar.
All right, let me do this. Do you recall where you purchased your firearm?
Gary's Guns.
Showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 94. It's a purchase permit. Do you recall filling one of these out when you purchased your handgun?
Yes, I did.
That's your name, is that correct?
That is correct.
I'll flip forward here. I'm assuming that is your signature?
Yes, it is.
All right. And if this record indicates, does that record indicate the serial number of the Walther P22 that you purchased?
Yes, it does.
In particular, L397098.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm assuming then that this is your application and license to purchase that particular pistol too. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, the exhibit that I showed you, Exhibit 76, when you purchased your handgun, did it come with an accessory?
Yes, it did.
What did it come with?
A laser.
And do you recall approximately where that laser was? Laser sight was located on the firearm?
Yes.
Just point to it.
Right there.
Well, me, I'm sorry. I know.
I don't-
It's not loaded, all right? What, was it below the barrel before the trigger guard?
Correct.
Okay.
There.
And was that something that you purchased separately and added, or was it attached to the gun when you bought it?
It was attached when we bought it.
Now, when you owned that particular firearm, how many times would you say that you fired it, that you actually used it?
That was fired approximately 4 different occasions.
Okay. Are you like a gun person?
Not really.
Okay. Now, during the time period that you worked with the defendant, did you ever have discussions with him about either A, purchasing this gun or actually having this gun in your house?
Yes, we did.
I mean, could you tell me how many times you think over the
Oh.
course of that time period?
Maybe 4 or 5 times. I mean,
Okay.
we've discussed it.
Did you talk to him about when you had these discussions with him? Was it general discussions about firearms, or did you specifically talk to him about this Walther P22?
I specifically talked to him about that.
Now, I'm assuming you stored this gun at your house,
Correct.
and where in your house would you store it? Where would it be?
In my closet.
Now, in your closet, and I'm trying not to get too personal here, but just bear with me. Did you keep your laundry basket or dirty laundry in that same area?
Yes.
Okay. Now, were you the type of person? Did you lock your house normally when you left it? Let's say you're going to work, or
Going to work? No.
all right. If you left town,
When we left town, it would be locked.
all right. But if you were just going to work or going around town, you usually kept your house open. Is that
Correct.
All right. Now, do you recall the last time that you saw that particular weapon?
It was the weekend of February 22nd, 23rd,
Of what year?
2013.
Now, why are you so certain about that?
Because there was a visitor that was in from out of town,
All right, friend of yours or a friend of your husband?
friend of my husband's.
And did the gun come out at that particular point?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, do you recall a time frame in early March where you were working and the defendant was on vacation? This is 2013.
Yes.
And do you recall around that time seeing snowmobile tracks at your house?
Yes.
And as a result of seeing that, what did you do?
Typically during the snowmobiling season, Jeff would snowmobile around my house. I would come home, there would be snowmobile tracks. And when he wasn't at work, the next time I seen him at work, I had approached him and said, "Oh, you were snowmobiling, you were up my way." And he said, "Oh, yes, yes, took a little ride around your house." Much like a calling card.
Okay, so the defendant then admitted to you that he'd actually been snowmobiling around your house?
Yes.
Now, between the last time you saw that gun, end of February 2013, and the time frame that you observed these snowmobile tracks in March of 2013, had you traveled anywhere outside where you would have locked your house?
No.
Now, at some point in time, well, let me ask you this. At any point in time from the last time you saw that handgun at the end of February 2013 until, I think I showed it to you at the Rebecca Bletch prelim for the first time, had you had any inclination as to whether or not that gun was missing or not from your house?
No.
Again, was it something that you would routinely search and look for?
No. No.
Do you recall, well, let me ask you this. Had the defendant ever been a guest at your house when you were at home, present?
No.
Do you recall ever physically showing him the gun or letting him use the gun or borrow the gun at any point in time?
Nope.
Ms. Schnotella, would there be any reason why the defendant would have any articles of your clothing at his house?
No.
Did you personally ever give him any articles of your
No, I did not.
I'm going to show you here, I'm going to have Lieutenant help me out here. This is People's Exhibit 89. I'm going to grab those out from you. I don't want you to touch them because they've been marked DNA and hazardous, but I just wanted to take a look at it. Do you recognize either one of those articles, the red pair of panties or the pink pair?
Yes, I do.
And how is it that you recognize them?
Because they were mine.
Okay. Both the red pair and the pink pair were yours?
Yes.
Thanks. That's it. When you were working at Herman Miller, did the defendant ever ask you for any articles of clothing in yours?
Yes, he did.
What was that? What would he ask for?
He would always ask for a pair of my underwear.
Did you ever oblige that request?
Absolutely not.
Were you ever interested in obliging that request?
Absolutely not.
I'm going back to the last time you saw the gun at the end of February 2013. Was the laser sight still attached to it at that point in time?
Yes, it was.
The person we've been talking about here, your coworker, Jeffrey Willis, is he in the courtroom?
Yes, he is.
Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing? please?
Orange jumpsuit to your left.
Your Honor, let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
The record will reflect the identification.
I have no further questions, Judge. Thank you.
Ross, Mr. Hostier.
Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms.
Good afternoon.
Schnotella. Is that right?
Mr. Hostier, you may hold it if you want.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm down with that.
You worked at Herman Miller for 22 years?
Approximately, I'd have to calculate it.
And with Mr. Willis for how many of those 22 years?
Approximately 7, give or take some months,
Okay.
maybe a year.
I think you said 7. You've done this before, right? Testified in a
Correct.
preliminary exam regarding Mr. Willis?
Pardon me?
Testified in a preliminary examination regarding Mr. Willis?
Yes, sir.
And you said it was 7 years?
Yes.
But if I told you that one of the police in their reports reported it was about 10 years, would that make you second guess your 7 years?
I don't know exactly when he came to work in our area.
Okay, but you knew him, you've known him a long time.
At least 5.
Okay. And you saw him every day?
When we were both at work, yes.
Okay, and you spoke with him every day?
Correct.
And you talked to Mr. Willis about the fact that you had this Walther P-22?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked to him, did you talk to him about the fact that you kept your house unlocked when you left home?
I don't recall that. I may have.
Okay. But you did lock it when you went on trips overnight?
Correct.
Do you recall ever talking to him about how you kept, whether you locked your house or not locked your house when you went on trips?
I don't recall if I had that discussion with him.
You talked to Mr. Willis about his snowmobiling
Yes.
and his love of snowmobiling.
Yes.
And there was a trail that went near your house, right?
Yes.
And he told you he liked that trail. And
Yes.
he took that trail. It's fair to say, is it not, that you guys were friendly while he worked with you?
We were acquaintances, yes.
Okay. Well, you guys talked about a lot of things.
Yes.
You were friendly.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you guys talked about a TV show once where someone broke into a house to steal women's panties, right?
Yes.
Did you watch that with him?
Did I watch it with him?
Or did you both see it at the same time from him from his house and you from your house?
We had a discussion of a show.
That you both saw, were watching the night before or
Yes.
something?
I believe it was a news article, not a show. It was a news article.
Oh, okay. And you guys, the two of you talked about your marriage too, right?
Correct.
And you talked to him about the troubles you were having in your marriage, right?
Not so much troubles, just my little gripes.
Okay. Well, in 2013, you were going through a divorce, correct?
No.
You recently had been divorced, though, correct?
Pardon me?
You recently did go through a divorce, correct?
Yes, I did.
When did that become final?
I don't know.
Might it have been in 2013?
No, I think it was 14.
Okay.
I'd have to look at paperwork, I'm not sure.
Okay, but you did talk to Mr. Willis about the problems you were having in your marriage.
Not problems, complaints. Not problems.
And my point is, you guys saw each other every day, and you were pretty close for that time period when you worked together, right?
Yes.
I mean, you even showed him a tattoo that you have on your abdomen.
Oh, yes. People see it in stretches, but yes.
Okay, it's an eyeball?
Very small.
Okay. And this thing about asking about your panties, that was really a joke between the two of you, right?
Pardon me?
He asked for your panties at work,
Yes,
and that got to be a running joke between the two of you.
that is correct.
Okay, you weren't offended by it, right?
Correct.
And you never reported it to your boss or whoever your supervisor was at
Yes.
Herman Miller, or made any complaints, right?
Nope.
Okay. Of all the time that you worked with Jeffrey Willis, he always had facial hair, right?
I believe so.
At least a mustache and a goatee,
Yes, I believe so.
and sometimes a full beard, right?
Yes.
When you went on trips where you locked your house, you didn't just lock your house, but you didn't leave your gun in the closet either, right?
Correct.
You put it in a special hiding place.
Correct.
The rafters up in your attic?
Yes.
And when you did leave your house for work and left the door unlocked, then it's the closet.
Yes.
Okay, where in the closet would you put that gun?
Top shelf?
Okay. It wasn't in plain view, right?
Yes.
It was? So the top shelf isn't top up here and out of the way, it's more eye level?
No, it's not eye level. It's up higher, yes.
Okay, could you see the gun when you walk into the closet?
Depending, when you open up the doors, depending on how far back you stood, if you stood back this far, you could not see that top shelf, but if you took a step closer, but not in the closet, you could see it.
Okay. Did there ever come a time when you told Jeff exactly where you put that gun when you left the house?
I don't recall.
But you may have?
What was that question?
My question is, did you ever tell Jeff where you put your gun when you left the house?
Oh, when I left the house? No. No.
And that closet was an attachment to what, your bedroom?
My bedroom,
Okay. And you kept your dirty laundry in the closet too?
next to it.
Next to,
The closet.
oh, outside the closet? but next
Outside
to
the
it?
closet, correct.
All right. During this time in 2013, you were married, yes?
Yes.
Your husband worked in some medical field, is that right?
Yes.
What did he
Well,
do?
not really medical field, no.
What did he do?
He worked at the Veterans Home in Grand Rapids.
Okay. And was it first shift?
First shift?
Okay. So he would get out of work, what, 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Or is that not right?
I think 3, but I'm not for sure. It was 2, 3 o'clock.
Okay. And then he would generally be home by what time?
4?
If he got out at 3?
Yeah.
Or 3 if he got out at 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
About an hour drive.
Okay. And he generally go right home after work?
Sometimes he would go to class.
What class?
Muskegon Community College. He had some classes there that he was taking.
Do you remember what classes back then?
Oh, gosh, no.
Now, you said you were never home when Jeff came by on his snowmobile, is that right?
Correct.
But wasn't there a time when Jeff once told you at work that he stopped by and you told him that he just missed you because you must have been outside smoking a cigarette?
I don't recall that at all. No.
Did you ever notice any sign of an illegal entry of your house?
No.
Okay. And your husband never said anything to you about suspecting that someone had been in your house
No.
when you're not home? Okay. You told police that not police, you told the court the last time you saw that gun was February 22nd, 23rd.
Correct.
For sure,
For sure.
because you have friends over.
Correct.
Who were the friends?
It was a friend of my husband's who was in town from Wisconsin,
What's his name?
Kevin Gong.
Kevin Gong was staying at your house that weekend?
Correct.
Why'd you have the gun out?
Because Ed, my husband, was showing it to him.
Okay. So 3 years later, well, let me strike that. So it's September 22, 23, Mr. Gong's here from Wisconsin, look at this gun. he goes back to Wisconsin and you put the gun back in the closet?
You said September 22nd, 23rd?
I
It
may
wasn't.
have,
Yeah,
February.
February.
Gun back in the closet?
Gun back in the closet, yep.
Okay. And you didn't see it again until you testified at the preliminary exam in the Bletch case. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And during that whole time, you never suspected it was stolen until the police came to see you, correct?
Correct.
Because during your divorce, you suspected that you had to divide your property. You and
Correct.
your husband, right?
Correct.
You thought your husband took the gun and you didn't really care,
No,
right?
no,
That's not right? That's not a correct statement?
no. I never suspected that my husband took the gun.
Okay. If I told you that you told, or that, excuse me for a minute. I need just a moment to find the right report, Judge. Was Lieutenant Casher you talked to back in, I don't see a date, but it wasn't that long ago, maybe October of this year or slightly before. But you remember talking to
Yes,
Lieutenant Casher?
talk to him.
You guys had a sit down at your address, I won't say what the address is, but at your house,
Yes,
correct? Okay. And if I told you that he stated in his report that you never really thought about the gun due to the fact that you went through a divorce, and when your ex-husband moved out, you just assumed he took the gun with him,
no,
and you didn't really care.
no, no, no,
You never said that to him?
no.
And so if he put that in his report,
Read those words.
Michelle never really thought about the gun due to the fact that she went through a divorce, and when
Yes.
her ex-husband moved out, she assumed he took the gun with him, and since she was not into guns, she didn't really care.
No, no, no.
No, you never said that?
No, with the gun, when Edward and I had separated, we both knew that the gun was somewheres hidden. So I wasn't worried about him having it because it had to have been somewheres in the house and I was to find it.
I'm not sure that answers my question.
I don't.
Did you tell him that or not? That you didn't care, you assumed your husband took the gun and you didn't care?
Judge, I'm going to object. She's answered, she's offering an explanation as to what she had, with the conversation you had with Lieutenant Casher. So I think she is answering the question. So I'm going to object to asked and answered.
Okay, well, I think the last question was very specific. Did she make that statement to Lieutenant Casher or not? And I think she can answer that, and he's entitled to impeach with a prior inconsistent statement. And I'll allow that question. So if objections overruled, go ahead, Mr. House.
Thank you. Did you tell him that you assumed your husband took the gun and you didn't care?
I don't recall saying that.
Okay. But here you're testifying today that you never thought that and that you knew it was stolen?
I never, it was my responsibility to look for the gun.
But it was
When
gone.
we separated, we knew that it was missing.
You never, the two of you talked about the fact that it was missing.
Correct, my husband and I.
Okay.
Yes.
So if Lieutenant Casher's got that in his report, that's completely false.
Judge, I'll object to the characterization of false.
Well, Mr. Hoskett, we're kind of going around here a little bit, and she's answered your questions as best she can, I think. So I would like you to get to the point here.
Okay.
Where you want to go. You're entitled to impeach her. There's no question. And I'll let you do that, but I believe that's done. But go ahead.
All right.
So I'll overrule the objection, but where are we going with this, Mr.?
Okay, well, I want to clarify what she said then.
Okay.
You said you had conversations with your husband about the gun being missing?
Correct, misplaced, missing.
When were the conversations?
With my husband and I was before we divorced, before he had moved out.
Okay. And you never reported that gun being stolen?
I did not believe it was stolen. I believe it was misplaced. So no, I did not report it stolen.
Did you look in the rafters spot?
A couple times,
Did you look in the closet spot?
yes.
Wasn't that either?
No,
And your husband didn't know where it was?
no, he did not.
And you guys never reported it stolen?
No.
I have no further questions.
I'm done.
And I have no questions, thank you. May the witness be excused, Mr. Hilson?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Hoskett?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you can stand down, thank you. Or excuse me.
Thank you.
People of the state of Michigan call Gary Foster to the stand.
Raise your right hand. In the matter now pending before this court, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Have a seat, state your name for the record, swear last name for the record.
Gary Foster.
Mr. Foster, do you own a business?
Yes, I do. Gary's Guns on Apple Avenue.
And I want to show you what's marked as People's Exhibit 94. Does that look familiar to you, sir?
Same copy I have in front of me. Yes, it does.
And does that indicate a purchase or a transaction between your shop, I think you directly, and a woman by the name of Michelle Schnatella Adams?
Yes, it does.
And again, is it a purchase of a Walther P22 pistol?
Yes, it is, and it was purchased with a permit from Montague PD.
Okay. And just so that I'm clear on my exhibit, I think those are your signatures, is that correct?
That's actually my wife, the co-owner.
Oh, okay, all right. Now, and this exhibit lists the serial number of the particular gun that you sold to Miss Schnattel.
Yes, it does.
Now, could you tell the judge, please, when that gun was sold, did it come with an accessory already attached to it?
Yes, it did. It was shipped to us with the laser and left my store with the laser.
All right, and that laser, just so we're clear where that laser was located, it's a laser sight, is that correct?
Correct. It's on the front rail of the gun.
All right, showing you what's People's Exhibit 76. First of all, that's a Walther P22.
That's a Walther P22
And the laser sight itself,
to the front rail.
all right, just in front of the trigger guard.
Correct.
Showing you, I'm going to show you, if you look at your screen right in
Okay.
front of you, is there a picture up there?
Yes, it is. It looks like the bottom battery cover of that laser, or that style of laser.
Okay. Exhibit 9, Judge. So you're jumping ahead of me just a little bit here, Mr. Foster. So
Sure.
Exhibit 9 is a photograph, and is that a laser cover, or a laser sight cover?
That's a battery cover for the laser sight.
All right. And you mentioned, before I asked the question, does that look consistent with what the cover of that particular Walther P22 sight would have?
For the year of 2013, absolutely.
Okay. Now, as it relates, and it was, do you know, sir, how was that sight powered?
There's 3 batteries in there, number 357 button cell batteries.
All right. And this is going to be a little bit difficult. We'll strike that because it's really hard to see in that photograph. But my question to you, Mr. Foster, is from your knowledge of this particular gun and sight cover, what type of force would it take to knock that cover off?
Probably dropping it from the normal level, or not from recoil. It'd have to be something more of a drop.
All right, so as forceful as a drop?
Correct.
Is it safe to say that it would require some force in order for that cover to pop off? And
Absolutely.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions.
Mr. Hoskins, correct.
Can you tell by looking at that?
You can see the word, yeah, Carl Walters right on the bottom.
Well, you didn't let me finish my question. Good afternoon, by the way.
Absolutely.
A date of manufacturing?
That I could not see on there, and I'm almost sure there is no date, so I could not testify to that at all.
Okay. Do you know when those began to be manufactured by Walther?
Probably 2011, 2010.
Are you guessing?
I'm guessing because I've seen them for a few years before this model, so yes. I'm guessing 2011, 2010.
Okay. And does the cover just kind of snap in place with some
Has force and it pushes down, yes.
plastic thing in the back of it?
Mm-hmm.
Then would it be fair to say that as it's used, taken off, put back on, it would get looser over time?
Like any plastic, yes, it would. But that gun was designed to have that laser stay in place, so it'd have to come on and off a lot.
But it's a relatively cheap accessory, correct?
It is. It's like $50.
Okay. Does it works, it fit, get the question right. It's made by Walther for the Walther P22, correct?
Correct.
But would it fit on other guns?
It's possible, yes. It is possible.
Can you May I approach, Judge?
You may.
Do you have the gun in front of you?
Right there.
It's over there.
It fits on the bottom?
On that little slot on that rail, slides right in there, uh-huh.
The slot?
Jessica, if you
Correct.
want me to see it, I can't see it through your back.
I don't want to touch the gun, Judge.
You don't have to, I just have to be in a position to be able to see what you're talking about.
Okay. So the horizontal slot
Correct.
in the bottom,
But those two devices were made to go together with dimensions that fit each other, so with alterations, you could make it fit another gun, but you'd have to alter it.
okay. And also, it's sold at other retail outlets, just the laser sight, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can buy it anywhere.
Okay, it doesn't have to come with the gun.
Correct.
Okay, you can buy it separately and you can add it on later.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how many Walther P-22s you ordered in 2012?
During that year, by memory, and I did not bring that information, I think we sold 62 of them, and 30 of them were with lasers.
Okay. And where did they come from?
We buy them from different wholesalers. This particular one came from Lou Horton Distributors.
Did you also sell the laser
It was, we
Okay. So the only time that laser left the store, your store, it was attached to
was
the...
attached to the gun.
Did you ever attach one to any different gun?
I'm a gunsmith and I could do it, but I wouldn't take the time and effort to do it.
Because it's a relatively cheap
It's,
accessory.
yeah, it's absolutely.
No further questions.
I have nothing else, Judge.
Mr. Foster, thank you. I have no other questions. Just one second before you leave. Mr. Hilson, may the witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
And may the witness be excused, Mr. Hosika.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Sir, you are excused. Thank you.
People of the state of Michigan call Clifford Barron to the stand. He's in the back.
All right. Well, is this
Sure.
a logical spot to take a 15-minute recess? We'll reconvene back here at 20 after the hour.
Quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion, nonillion, then decillion. Then it gets weird. In case you're wondering, none is on the files. No, I have to look it up, actually. It was